The Syntax of Things by Arisha. Chapter 9, Wisdom. Observations. There was no other enjoyment like reading. Books were the quietest and most loyal of friends. They were the most accessible and wisest of counselors and the most patient of teachers. Books provided self-possession, control, knowledge. One could live several lives while reading. Good books and a wary conscience. This was what a good life was made of. For books were the plane and the train and the road. They were the destination and the journey. A journey that demanded silence and concentration, submission, devotion to the pages and their meanings. Meanings one could only interpret with inner meditation and seclusion. Meanings one could not interpret when a pair of feet were thumping down the staircase. Meanings impossible to even get a glimpse of when another person was coming into view in the same room with the reader intending to stay, without asking for permission, without feeling the need to. Severus sighed. "Why must you bother me, Potter?" Potter picked a random book from the bookcase set on the floor before the dormant hearth and shrugged. "Why must you bother me? I didn't even talk to you." "Wretched little monster." He ended up in the same room with Severus far too often lately. It wasn't a coincidence. Potter's owl hadn't brought him any letters since his first week here, so it seemed his friends had at last seized their summer and forgotten about him for the time being. On the other hand, Potter's nightmares hadn't ceased, even though they didn't occur every night anymore. Although when they did, they were loud enough to wake up the entire neighborhood. Severus couldn't define what exactly had changed, and he couldn't bring himself to ask either, doubting that Potter had any idea about his own nightly horrors anyway. "What's Mirror's Magus?" Well, dreams never lasted long. Severus glared. "A book." Potter held up the book in question. "I know that. I mean, what does it mean? The title." "It means wonderful magic. And I suggest you leave that book alone, as your comprehension level will miserably fail you in achieving the understanding it demands." Severus watched until, after grimacing, Potter placed the book back on the shelf and browsed through the titles to choose another one. "Don't you have anything interesting in here to do? Besides, books." His tone betrayed that books didn't appeal at all interesting to him. Of course, it wasn't surprising. "The invitation to scrub the floor is still open. Those damn biscuits of yours have covered my carpets with chocolate crumbs." His disgust was met with a daring sparkle in Potter's eyes. "That's not true. I'm always careful. Besides, you are the one who ate the last box." "Please, Potter, do find it in your heart to forgive me. When in my house, from now on, I will always ask for permission first." Potter snorted. "What's behind that door?" Severus turned the page. "Do you hide any dead bodies in there?" "I might begin to." "Right." Potter sat cross-legged again, a bit closer to him this time. Much closer. "Yes, do come closer, Potter. Don't be shy. You can even sit on my lap if you want to." He snarled. A wild blush attacked Potter's cheeks, and he quickly shifted a foot away. As much as he disliked familiarity, embarrassing Potter was a pleasurable way to make up for it. "You'd wish," Potter said, annoyed, and not for the first time. Potter's cheek was unbelievable. The boy had no sense of modesty or manners. Talking back was not only defense these days, Potter was enjoying it. Not that Severus was fond of surrendering either. As long as Potter continued this farce, he was determined to provoke him all the same. It was only right for Severus to have the last word, especially with James Potter's son. This was his home, his student, his giving. And he had never expected Potter to be able to carry on this far. Dumbledore should have foreseen that they'd insult each other until one of them broke. Potter would, but not yet. The boy's mind was absolutely twisted. "Perhaps I'd wish." Here they were, something nice for Potter to chew on, get scared of, and shut up. But Potter grinned to his book, his hand methodically keeping notes on a piece of paper. "Now or later, then. You look impatient." And he had been taught well. "I might vomit." "What's Cornus Florida?" Potter asked, his pen stilled. "A plant that resembles you greatly, commonly known as nature's mistake." Potter wrote it down and underlined it. "That wasn't even clever," he muttered without losing his concentration. Concentration on what? "Suddenly interested in herbology, Potter, are we? What are you playing at?" Severus placed his own book aside, kneeled down, and yanked the book from Potter's hands. Hey! Potter made a motion of taking it back, but Severus pushed him away. Well, wonders will never cease after all. Preparation instructions for a mind-clearing potion, and you have the cheek to read this right under my nose, before my eyes even. Is this how you plan on shielding your mind? With tricks? He snapped the book closed, waiting for an answer. And not so surprisingly, Potter had one, and this time he wasn't even embarrassed. Well, I wasn't going to hide it from you, obviously. Who do you think I was going to ask to brew me the potion, or did you think I'd make it myself? I was just about to tell you. He wasn't lying, which meant that he was an absolute imbecile. And you thought that I'd let you ensconce yourself to the easy solution. You thought that I'd simply give you another way out of your responsibilities. He was wasting his time. He should have accepted years ago that Potter had no interest in obeying the simplest of rules and let him torture himself over his inabilities until he voluntarily gave up. Only those who dared to fail greatly could ever achieve greatly. This blasted boy had no desire to try whatsoever. Potter's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I don't want it for our lessons. I want it so I can sleep better at night. Severus stared. Potter stared back. Severus's chest clenched around something uncomfortable. He shifted, blinking twice at the book in his hand. You've been having visions again. Of course not, I'd tell you if I had. I just want to avoid dreaming for a while. His eyes averted, and Severus had to restrain himself from simply digging into his mind and fishing out whatever the boy was hiding this time. Potter, it's nothing, really. I just sleep better when I don't dream. Sometimes I wake up with a headache and stuff, you know? And I just found that book anyway. I wasn't preparing anything. I guess I was just lucky. He made an attempt at smiling, but quickly dropped it and went back to staring at the floor. What did he want so desperately to get away from? What are your nightmares about? Potter looked up, and Severus was surprised at the hardness shadowing his features. That doesn't concern you. And you're absolutely sure they're not visions? Potter nodded. Yes. So are you going to brew it, or is it difficult? No potion was difficult for him. This one, though, was unnecessary. You may take a dreamless sleep potion from the bathroom's cabinet. Tonight only. Take a second vial and I'll know. Severus pulled himself up and threw the book on the sofa. Potter crinkled the paper on his hand, tossed it aside, and disappeared to the kitchen. If the Dark Lord had begun creeping into Potter's mind again, it was possible that he already knew about their lessons. He felt offended by the possibility of having to die cowardly. He was not ready to beg for his life, and Potter had to control his mind if they were to survive this war. And yet the boy had proved himself smarter than Severus thought. It was that clever glimpse that would instantly sparkle in his eyes, something that neither Lily nor James had, something exclusively his own. The way he'd smile when insulted, making a complete fool out of Severus. The way he'd always find his way to him with a daring, curiosity-driven kindness that Severus had never come across before. The way he'd dirty his carpets and furniture with biscuit crumbs, bringing this home to life for the first time in 20 years. Making it breathe. Make it inhale youngness again. As disgusting as that was. Severus treaded to the window and watched. He needed to get groceries, but it was a bad afternoon to be outside with such a feeling in one's heart. The rain appeared cold, pitiless, and increasing. The fog seemed to expand with the rain. The roadway was muddy, the pavement greasy, the street lamps burned dimly, and that dreary district of Spinner's End looked its very gloomiest and worst. But it wasn't.